8 o'clock. Arthur and I flipped on the TV as soon as we got back to my house. He chucked the sack containing the clean socks and Fruit of the Loom underwear onto the sofa, then stretched out there himself. Channel 5 or Channel 11? I asked. 10-11. I moved his feet and sat down next to him. I could hear Mom out in the kitchen, sewing away on Grandma Hatch's birthday dress. Click-clack, clickety-clack. Fast, then slow. Then a long humming stretch where Mom gunned it for all she was worth. Arthur made one of his terrific accelerating noises, and we both doubled up. The TV show had already started, but that rarely bothers Arthur and me. When we're watching something funny like Laverne and Shirley or Happy Days, we can tune in any old time. When the first commercial came on, I went to the kitchen for some potato chips. I couldn't believe what I saw there. The curtains at the kitchen window were blowing straight in. They looked like something a cartoonist might draw. "Hey!" I shouted for Mom to look. "Isn't that crazy?" I leaned over the sink to peer out, but Super Breeze nearly flattened me. "Would you close that, please?" Mom said. It's suffocate or blow away, one or the other. You put your bike in the garage, I hope." "Yep." I opened the cupboard where we kept the chips. "You suppose Dad and Grandpa got the tractor running yet?" I asked. "Probably." She lifted the presser foot and I heard her snipping threads. If Arthur's hadn't been there, I'd have sat down and watched her sew. I loved her new machine. It was the last thing she bought before she quit at the hair boutique. She really knew how to operate it too. Forward, reverse, flip, snip. Zigzag, zing, zag, zig, 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 zig. I made zigzagging motions in the air until Mom asked what in the world I was doing. Then I remembered why I'd come to the kitchen in the first place. We're out of chips, Dan, if that's what you want." I settled for soda crackers. I watched Mom as she held the top half of the lavender dress at arm's length to inspect it. "I wonder if Mother Hatch wants this skirt gathered or pleated," she said more to herself. "Why not do both?" I suggested. Mom grinned. She blew a strand of hair out of her face, then pushed back her chair and went to the phone. "I'll be sorry if I don't ask her." "That's funny," I heard her say a minute later. I looked up from spreading peanut butter on crackers to see her staring at the mouthpiece. She clicked the little chrome piece up and down. Click, click, click. Then dialed again. "Now it's ringing, but no one's answering," she mumbled. Where would Grandma Hatch be on a night like this? I shrugged and carried my plate of crackers back to the living room. Arthur was glad for the arrival of food that we almost missed the severe weather announcement coming over the TV. "In St. Paul area, just north of Grand Island." Well, I heard that much. Mom rushed in through the dining area. "Listen!" Shh, 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 she shushed us. "In effect until further notice is given, warnings are being issued for St. Paul, Danbrog, and surrounding rural areas. Funnel clouds have been sighted near Danbrog. Persons in those vicinities are urged to take all possible precautions." Mom had her hand over her heart. St. Paul's northwest, thank God. Arthur sat up, his eyes round. "Grandma's farm is east, close to Phillips," I explained. "St. Paul's still too close for comfort," Mom added. "Do we have to go to the basement?" I asked. Now that we were all set for the next show, well, I hope not. Mom didn't answer. She had her face against our big front window, shielding her eyes, trying to see out. Normally she's a lot more casual about storms than Dad is. But she looked worried. "It's pitch black out there," she said. "I've never seen it so dark this early." It was noisy outside as well as dark. Our shake shingles, flapping and smacking overhead, made me think somebody was up there playing a xylophone on the roof. Minerva didn't like the weather either. She was crouched under Dad's chair with her ears back. No wonder. She'd be carried off like a tumbleweed in one of our stiff prairie winds. I was glad when Mom pulled the drapes for us. "Do we have to go downstairs?" I asked again. Not yet, Danny. We'll keep listening to the TV. Arthur spoke up. Tornadoes move from southwest to northwest, remember. I remembered. Our science class had taken a field trip in April to visit the weather service out at the airport. The meteorologist had shown us how they get the hook echo on radar, how they post a watch, and all that technical stuff. Arthur made arm motions toward a plant hanging in the corner of the room. It'll head off that way someplace. His expert opinion should have made me feel better, but, well, it didn't. He helped himself to another cracker, then settled back into the sofa cushions. He wasn't worried. Mom's forehead puckered as she walked away. I knew what was on her mind. We were both wishing Dad was home. We watched TV another few minutes, but I couldn't get into it like before. Not that I was scared exactly. I'd been through a dozen tornado watches in my life, and nothing ever happened. Though a barn roof got rearranged over in Clay Center one year, every spring, practically, we have to hit for the cellar, as Grandpa puts it. But when a tornado watch changes to a warning, and when the siren starts, well, that's when things aren't so mellow anymore. Shouldn't you call your mother, Arthur? Mom said to him after trying the phone again. I'm not sure she would want you to stay the night here tonight. Oh, Mom, I groaned. There I was, thinking the sun rose and set on me. Wait, I'd better call Goldie first, she said. Somebody should run over and check on Mrs. Smiley. When she turns that hearing aid down, after a while she hung up again. Doesn't anybody stay home? She muttered. By then I was standing in the kitchen doorway, trying to tell her that Aunt Goldie had probably gone bowling. Who are you calling now? I asked her instead. Her attacks on the phone were suddenly more interesting than what was happening in the living room color on the 19-inch screen. Mrs. Smiley, shh. She's trying to finish a needlepoint cushion for the Presbyterians, Arthur piped up from the sofa. Yeah, I whispered in Mom's face, remembering, and I'm supposed to tell you not to forget she's coming Friday for you to fix her hair. All the while, Mom was waving her hand for us to be quiet, so I backed away. Next thing I knew, she was at the hall closet, putting her red windbreaker on over her jeans and Hastings College t-shirt. She doesn't answer, she said. I'm driving over there to make sure she has her TV on. I won't be long. Now listen, both of you. We listened. She was using a very firm voice. I want you to take this flashlight. She got it off the shelf and handed it to me, and a blanket, and put them in the downstairs bathroom. I want you to do it this minute. I nodded, trying the flashlight to make sure it worked. If the siren starts, get Ryan and go downstairs. Don't wake him up if you can help it, all right? Arthur's eyes got big listening to Mom. He told me once they never go to the basement during windstorms. That figures. They moved here from California. What do they know? Ever hear of a tornado in good old California? Mom went to get the blanket. I'll be right back, she told us, hooking her purse on her shoulder. I'm sure nothing's going to happen, but we have to be prepared, right? Your father would have a fit if we ignored the siren. She smiled and waved her car keys at us as she left, barely squeezing out before the door slammed shut again. Woo-wee! Arthur exclaimed. Sounds like my bull roarer outside. I hurried downstairs with the emergency stuff and set it on the bathroom counter. Minerva went with me, scurrying across my feet on the steps, acting the way she does when she wants attention. I picked her up by the middle, smoothed down her stripes, and balanced her on the glass door of the shower. Usually, she'll do a tightrope act for me, but she only yowled and jumped off. After giving me her mean jungle look, she sat down to dig at her ear. You got a flea in there? I asked, bending to give her a good scratching. She didn't like that either. Upstairs, Arthur was hooting and hollering again. I decided I was missing all the good parts, so I hurried up the 2 short flight of steps, Minerva dashing ahead of me. Sometime in there, in the middle of all that comedy on the screen, the siren began. Now, that is a very sobering sound. It's unlike anything else, having its own built-in chill factor. I thought of Mom first. She'd hear it and come back, I told myself. And then I thought of Dad and how far the farm was from town. They wouldn't even hear the siren out there. In half a second, I was at the phone dialing 555-2379. 4 rings, then I heard Grandma's voice. "Grandma!" I shouted into the phone. "Where have you been? There's a tornado just north of GI. The siren's going. Can you hear it?" A voice said something, but it sounded so far away. "Talk louder, Grandma. I can't hear you." The voice faded away entirely. I wasn't even sure if it was Grandma's now. "There's a tornado coming. Can you hear me?" Finally, there wasn't anything on the line, but the sound of another phone ringing very faintly, as if it were in New York or some faraway place. I couldn't figure it out. By then, Arthur was standing next to me. I was just about to hand him the phone when, abruptly, the siren stopped. It didn't taper off, it just quit, as if someone snipped it with scissors, except for the TV. Everything around us suddenly seemed very still. "Hey," he said, raising his eyebrows. "They changed their minds." I hung up the phone. I didn't know what was happening. "Maybe they got the weather signals crossed," he suggested happily. "They could, you know. I read a book once about that happening, where this whole fleet of fishing boats put out to sea." He rattled on. I ran to the door, thinking I might see Mom pulling into the driveway, but no luck. "It's quit blowing," I called over my shoulder to Arthur. Sure enough, the wind had died down. Maybe the storm wouldn't amount to anything after all. That nice, comforting thought had hardly entered my mind when the siren blared forth again. With a jolt, I remembered what Mom had told us to do. "We always turn on the radio," Arthur said, already on his way to the kitchen. "You want me to? I'll get the weather station." I was hardly listening. I hurried down to the bedroom hallway to Ryan's room at the end. I hated like everything to get him up. He'd cry. I knew he'd wake up and cry. Without Mom, Arthur and I would have him screaming in our ears the whole time. When I saw him in his crib, peacefully sleeping on the side of his face, his rear end in the air, I just didn't have the heart to wake him up. I'd wait a minute or two. Mom would be back. Anyway, it's blowing over, I told myself. It won't last. Quietly, I closed the door behind me. That's when the lights started flickering. In the hallway, I practically had a head-on with Arthur, who was coming at me real fast. The look on his face scared me. There's no... What? There's no radio reception anymore. It just went dead. This guy, he kept saying, "Tornado alert, tornado alert." Then it went dead. We rushed back to the living room. The TV was flashing these big letters that filled the entire screen. CD, CD, CD. What did it mean? Arthur cried. "Civil defense emergency." I whirled around. "I'm getting Ryan." The lights flickered again. At the same time, we heard these really strange sounds that stopped us in our tracks. They were coming from the bathroom and the kitchen. Sucking sounds. The drains were sucking. I felt this awful pulling in my ears, too, as if there were vacuums on both sides of my head. "I gotta go home," Arthur cried all of a sudden, bolting for the door. I ran after him. "You're not! You can't!" I grabbed him back of his t-shirt, hauled him around, and pushed him toward the stairs. "Get down there! I have to get Ryan. Now go." I don't know what I'd have done if he hadn't minded me. We were catching the fear from each other now, and even though the siren was screaming on and off again, so I didn't know what what it was telling us, I just knew we had to take cover fast. The lights went out for good just before I reached Ryan's room. 9 o'clock. I smashed face first into Ryan's butterfly mobile. That's how I knew I was at the crib. I felt for him, got my hands under his nightshirt and diaper, rolled him over. I lifted him, but we didn't get far. He was caught in the mobile. His arm or his head, I couldn't see. I couldn't get him loose. "Mom!" I yelled, though I knew she wasn't there. I tried to lay him down again, but he was so tangled. Part of him was just still up in the air. He started to cry. "Wait, Ryan. I'll get you out." But I couldn't. Finally, holding him with my left arm, I climbed onto the side of the crib. My right hand followed the string up the mobile, way up to the hook. I yanked it loose. The whole thing came crashing down on top of us as I jumped backward off the crib. The plastic butterfly poking me was poking Ryan too, but I didn't care. The tornado was close, and I knew it. Both my ears had popped, and I had this crazy fear that those drains, sucking like monsters now, would get us if the storm didn't. Arthur was at the bottom of the stairs waiting. Thank God he'd found the flashlight. I jumped the last half flight to the floor. "Hurry!" I screamed. I swung into the doorway of the bathroom. With Arthur right behind me, we crouched under the towel rack. "Shine it here on Ryan," I gasped. "He's caught in this thing." But now Ryan was kicking and screaming, and his eyes were big in the light. Once we got the mess of strings free of Ryan's sweaty nightshirt, Arthur kicked the mobile against the wall by the toilet. "I have to go home," he cried. "They won't go to the basement. Mama never does." The beam of light bounced around the blackness of the bathroom as Arthur scrambled to his feet. But I grabbed and held on to him. "You can't go. It's here. Can't you feel it?" The siren quit again as I pulled him back down and threw my leg over him. The flashlight clattered to the floor and rolled away from us. We heard it next. The lull. The deadliest quiet ever. One that makes you think you might explode. The heat in that room built until I couldn't get my breath. Then I began to hear noises. A chair scraping across the kitchen floor upstairs. "Your mom's back," Arthur said, pushing at my leg. I knew it wasn't my mother moving that chair. The noises got worse. It seemed as if every piece of furniture was moving around up there. Big, heavy things smashing into each other. A window popped. Crash! Another. Glass shattering everywhere. Right next to us in the laundry room. I pulled a towel down over Ryan and held him tight. If he was still crying, I didn't know it, because I was feeling the sucking this time. It was like something trying to lift my body right up off the floor. Arthur felt it too. "Mother of God!" He crossed himself. "We're gonna die!" 10 seconds more, and that howling, shrieking tornado was upon us. "The blanket!" I screamed at Arthur's ear. He pulled it down from the countertop, and we covered ourselves, our hands shaking wildly. I wasn't worrying about my mom then, or my dad, or Miss Smiley. Just us. Ryan and Arthur and me, huddled together there on the floor. The roaring had started somewhere else to the east, then came bearing down on us like 100 freight trains. Only that twister didn't move on. It stationed itself right overhead, making the loudest noise I'd ever heard. Whining worse than any jet. There was a tremendous crack, and I felt the walls shudder behind us. I knew then our house was being ripped apart. Suddenly, chunks of ceiling were falling on our heads. "We'll be buried," was all I could think. At that moment, as plain as anything above that deafening roar, I heard my dad's voice. "The shower's the safest place." I didn't question hearing it. Holding Ryan against me with one arm, I began crawling toward the shower stall. I reached back and yanked at Arthur's shirt. Somehow, we got inside with the blanket. Another explosion. The glass shower door shattered all over the bathroom floor. We pulled the blanket over our heads, and I began to pray. Out loud, though I couldn't hear my own voice. God help us. God help us. I said it over and over into Ryan's damp hair, my lips moving against his head. I knew Arthur was praying too, jammed there into my side. I could feel Ryan's heart beating through his undershirt against mine. My heart was thanking God for making me go back for him, but not in words. Outside those places where our bodies touched, there was nothing but terror as the roar of that tornado went on and on. I thought the world was coming to an end, had come to an end, and so would we any minute. Then I felt Ryan's fat fingers close around one of mine. He pulled my hand to his mouth and started sucking on my finger. It made me cry. The tears ran down my cheeks and onto his head. With the whole world blowing to pieces around us, Ryan took my hand and made me feel better. Afterward, neither Arthur and I was able to say how long we huddled there in the basement shower. A tornado's forward speed is generally 30 to 50 miles an hour, the meteorologist had told us. Our tornado's forward speed was 0. It parked right there on Sand Crane Drive. 5 minutes, or 10, we couldn't tell, but it seemed like an hour. Roaring and humming and shrieking. That twister was right on top of us. I'll never be that scared again as long as I live. Neither will Arthur. When at last the noise began to let up, Arthur jerked out from under the blanket, leaned across me to the opening of the shower, and vomited into the broken glass and sheetrock. The glow from the half-buried flashlight showed his head bobbing again and again. Squeamish as I am about something like that, I wasn't revolted. I wondered if I had wet my pants myself. I couldn't tell for sure, because water had started rising under us in the shower. My shoes and jeans were both soaked. I had to move Ryan, who was wiggling to be put down, way up on my shoulder. Arthur, I said, my voice shaking, but thinking to encourage him, we made it. We're alive. I looked away as he heaved again. Arthur was still doubled over the sheetrock mess when the hail began. Once it got going, it hit us with the force of buckshot. That fast, I knew the kitchen upstairs was gone, floor and all. Those marble-sized hailstones were pouring in from somewhere. I thought of Mom's sewing machine, my bike. It didn't take long for Arthur to crawl back beside me, but even under the blankets, those hailstones hurt like crazy, smacking our heads and our shoulders. We huddled together to protect Ryan, who was down in my lap again. Suddenly, I was hit with a sickness worse than Arthur's. Mom, where was she? Did she have to get to Smiley's? Arthur, I cried, sitting up straight. My mom! My whole family, he choked out. In that second, I could see my mother's car hurtling through the air, seeing it ripping open, the black funnel sucking her out and swirling her away. I could hear her scream. I started crying. She can't be dead. She can't be. I hit my head against the tile to make the picture stop. Shut up, Arthur shouted. Just shut up, will you? He pulled away so we weren't touching and drew himself into the opposite corner of the shower. I didn't care. I felt as if someone had reached down my throat and turned me inside out. Another terrifying thought slammed into my head. What if we were the only ones alive? 3 of us out of 38,000 people, an entire city gone, bodies strewn all the way to the river. Chills raced up my arms. I was shaking all over. At least, I scrabbled for something to hang on to. At least least I still have my dad. He'd be safe, wouldn't he? Out on the farm? With a rush, I thought of everyone else. Stacy and Angelique, not even a year old, and all the Darlingtons in between. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, have mercy on us. I heard Arthur's prayer above the ripping and rattling of the storm and knew he wasn't thinking of himself. I clenched my teeth to keep me from going to pieces. Please, God, please, I begged, make everyone okay. Overhead, the storm continued to rage. The sharp sound of hail striking tile went on, and I began to wonder if we might just be battered to death. Now and then, a finger of wind reached into our hiding place, flipping the blanket until we'd anchored it under us again. I shuddered and pulled up my knees, shifting the baby once more. With the temperature dropping and the water rising, we couldn't stay in the shower stall forever. Well, what were we going to do? Only Ryan had recovered enough to be himself and was dabbling one hand in the water, making happy noises. Once I got him to a standing position against my knees, he began talking and stretching under the blanket tent. He wasn't worried. I wiped my tears in the back of his undershirt. What does he know? I thought. For a second, wishing I could trade places with him. He wouldn't even remember this night. As Ryan bunched up into my lap to jump, I took hold of his hands to steady him. I made little balls of his fist and felt how small they were inside my big 12-year-old hands. Suddenly, it occurred to me that I'd saved his life. I had. I warned myself on that thought as I rubbed my cheek against his head. He was so little, and he bounced and gurgled. I could see why Mom liked him so much. That was when I remembered Minerva, my cat. Oh no! Had she followed us downstairs? But a cat would find a place, wouldn't she? To ride out the storm? Cats are smart. They can take care of themselves. She's all right. I convinced myself because I couldn't bear to think otherwise. The hard, peppering sounds of the hail were growing slushier, softer. The hail was turning to rain. Quickly, I slipped the blanket off my head. My gosh, there was the night sky where the bathroom ceiling had been. I shivered as icy raindrops splattered in my face and went streaking down my neck. Somehow, seeing was worse than knowing. Arthur, I nudged him with my foot. Look up there. He pulled the blanket off and tipped his head back. He sat there, blinking into the rain as the blanket bobbed up and down over Ryan.